Welcome to Mental Mettle Coaching, where our mission is to help you learn to thrive in the face of adversity, not just survive it. We are passionate about empowering you to live, play, and work with a resilient and spirited mindset. Hi, I'm Matt Toman. I'm an ICF professional coach and keynote speaker. My background as an athlete, basketball coach, teacher, and school administrator has equipped me with the insights that resonate deeply with the schools, teams, athletes, and coaches I work with. However, it's my personal journey through anxiety, cancer, and an ischemic stroke in 2020 that truly brings authenticity to my presentations. While learning to speak and write again, I also pursued and earned my ICF coaching certification. Now the practices I embrace are more than theoretical concepts. They're a way of life. Developing a positive mindset is within reach for all, but it requires self-awareness and the repetition of intentional activities. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we'll guide you, your staff, and your students on this transformative journey. Together, let's forge your mettle. This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission to help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle. Welcome back, Metalheads. It's Coach Toman here with the Mental Mettle Podcast. Today on the show, joined by one of the best hammer throwers in the world, Rachel Richeson, and that's really cool. So if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I've had the privilege of interviewing several Olympic athletes, Team USA competitors, of all sorts of different disciplines. And today's guest, yet another incredible athlete. And I got to continue to thank Shane Fisher, founder of the American Paragons, for making this connection. Shane does a great job of shining a spotlight on Olympic and Paralympic athletes whose stories, they deserve to be heard. It needs to be a little bit more attention on some of these underwatched, underfunded sports. And that's, I'm more than happy to be a partner with Shane and the American Paragons to do that. So Rachel is a member of Team USA, two-time Olympic trials qualifier, one of the most accomplished female hammer throwers in American history, because it's kind of a nation sport. It's up and coming. It's growing. So after she had a standout career at the University of Notre Dame, where she became a 5-time NCAA All-American and set school records in hammer, throw, weight, discus, did a lot of throwing, and she's continued to climb the ranks professionally and gotten a lot better since college, and that's really a big part of the story. But this because this conversation isn't obviously about hammer throwing. It is, but this isn't. I don't want to say I don't care about hammer, but it's never about the sport. It's about being your best at the sport and the mental part of that. So what's really cool about hammer throwing and what's really interesting about this conversation is that hammer throwing comes down to, if we're talking about making the Olympics, it comes down to 6 throws. And it's about carrying the weight of those expectations, bouncing back after disappointment, learning how to compete when your body's, full of nerves, and when your mind wants to race and be anxious, because it comes down to 6 throws. And Rachel, in Rachel's story, we talk about how she went from a volleyball player who didn't even know what a hammer was really until college, and became and now she's one of the best hammer throwers in the world. And we dive into the psychology of the sport, why identity matters. We talk a little bit about youth specialization, the dangers of that, but then how she manages to handle pressure in competition, and we talk a little bit about failure towards the end, and just how you have to deal with failure, because there's a big part of that along the way. And just really some really cool stuff. And so if you're a athlete, coach, parent, whatever, pursuing excellence in any field, there's a lot to take away from this conversation. I love how she talks about seeing her own potential, seeing her growth, and building on that. And that's just, I think, probably one of the most important themes from this is just she had a lot of faith in herself, and her coaches had a lot of faith in her and knew that she had more, and just her drive to want to continue to give more and reach more and do more. And I think I see her having a lot of faith and belief in herself, and I think that's worth listening to. So here's my conversation with Team USA hammer thrower Rachel Richeson. A paragon is a model of excellence, a standard by which others are measured, which makes it a perfect word for Olympians who embody dedication, resilience, and the very peak of physical and mental performance. With that in mind, we want to highlight our partners at the American Paragons Foundation. They're a nonprofit supporting Team USA athletes in underfunded women's and adaptive sports by helping them with career opportunities, media exposure, and real-world support beyond competition. Here at the Mental Mettle Podcast, we are proud to be collaborating with them and help amplify the stories and missions of athletes who deserve more visibility. Check out AmericanParagons.org to learn more. There are a ton of ways you can get involved that don't cost a dime. All right, here we go. It's the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toma. I'm here with my guest today, member of USA Track and Field, Rachel Richeson. How you doing, Rachel?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So before we get anything else, tell everybody what's your discipline? Like what do you do in track and field?
Yeah, so I am a hammer thrower. I throw the hammer for USA Track and Field. Most recently at the 2025 World Championships in Tokyo. That was my first US team, so hoping to build from there and make some more.
Okay. Let's get into, and we'll talk about like some of your successes and where you're at and what you're getting to. But like, I've had a few throwers on the show lately, and my first question to everybody that is a thrower is like, and especially a hammer thrower, how in the world do you get into hammer throwing? Like that's not like
it is.
kids don't grow up and go, I'm going to throw the hammer. You might a little bit, like if you happen to be at some very impressionable age when you turn on the Olympics, but for the most part, kids don't go up and say I'm going to be a hammer thrower, especially a woman. Like how do you like I'm going to be a hammer thrower? Like where does that even come from?
So I think my path, at least to hammer throw, is probably similar to most in the sense that I didn't start until I got to college. You've probably heard that if you've talked to other hammer throwers at this point. But yeah, went to college. Well, okay, let me rewind a little further. So I was a volleyball player all growing up, did the whole like travel club thing. And I did track also since I was a little kid, but just kind of as like a secondary thing that I enjoyed, have fun, keep me in shape, all that good stuff. I was mainly like a jumper and a hurdler. But then got to my junior year, track season had kind of been plateauing at the jumps a little bit, and two people, one, my high school track coach, and two, my dad, both said like, hey, you're good at volleyball, you have a really good arm, why don't you try throwing the discus? And I did, and it went well for the first year. I made the state meet, which is not bad for your first year. Um,
Absolutely not.
and then senior year, the discus really started to take off. And I was going to the University of Notre Dame regardless. I had already gotten into school and enrolled and everything. And once senior track season came around and the discus started really flying, I reached out to the coach and said, "Hey, I'm coming here. Is there a spot on the team?" And he said, "Sure, we'll, you know, try you out, see what happens." And so this is where hammer comes in. Because so few people throw hammer in high school, I think there's only like one or two states where it's like actually sanctioned as
Right.
an event. Um, most college coaches will just kind of try all their throwers on the hammer, and either it sticks or it doesn't. And for me, it stuck. And by my sophomore year, I think it was my best event, and still did hammer, shot, discus through all of college, but hammer pretty quickly, kind of took over the other two in terms of what I was good at. And so, yeah, just kind of kept building
Yeah,
from
well,
there.
that's
And
what's really interesting about that. Yeah, what's funny about that story is like you grew up playing volleyball, you're playing club volleyball. You can't just you decide to go to the University of Notre Dame. You can't just shoot an email to the coach of the volleyball team and say, "Hey, I'm coming to the team. Can you
yeah,
just make a
I
spot
think
for
I had
me?" And
tried,
they don't
honestly,
do.
not that late. I think I, at
You,
some point earlier than that, I had
yeah,
sent, obviously
but
didn't get a
I'm just
response. I
saying it's
think
a
I
little
could have
bit more.
probably,
There,
yeah, I think I probably could have played at some level of college, maybe
right.
D2, I don't know, but yeah, definitely not quite the same same kind of
Well,
deal.
that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
you can't just show up and say like that's an extremely competitive spot to be able to
Yeah.
go play that Division 1
Yeah.
level.
Well, and also
And
just to
but yeah,
just to sidebar a little bit, just like with roster limits and everything that are in college sports now. So I got to college in 2017. I don't know if the same kind of opportunity would be available to me if I was in the same exact position right now, just with, colleges being forced to like make these hard decisions about how roster spots are allocated at the D1 level. I don't know if there would have been a space to be like, "Hey, here's this kid, we're going to come try out and see what happens." Yeah, from what I've heard, it doesn't really seem like that's as much of an option anymore in kind of the D1 landscape right now, which is a little unfortunate. And I'm kind of glad that I things were the way they were when I came along and made that possible for me. So
well, and then that's the thing. It's clearly it just kind of like a divine just it just happened to be that way to work for you because I'm guessing the fact that you picked up and you asked if you could try out for discus. They put you on the hammer and you say it's stuck. Well, it must have done more than stuck because now you're like you are in the top in all of the women's in hammer, right? So how did the college career go then?
yeah, I would say, I mean, freshman year it was solid. Again, at that point, shot and disc were still better than hammer, but my sophomore year, I had a 10-meter jump in my PR. That was when I really kind of started figuring things out. And college career went well enough. I mean, COVID was right in the middle. That was spring of my junior
Sure.
year. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely solid. I was a better weight thrower so I don't know if you're familiar with the weight throw. Is basically like the
Yeah,
indoor version of
that's
the
that's
hammer.
the
It's like the
yeah, the indoor.
shorter,
I
heavier hammer. So I was a lot better at that
yeah,
in college actually than I was the hammer. I was what NCAA runner up in 2021. And I was actually the number one seed going into the nationals in 2020 that got canceled. Um, but yeah, was pretty good in the weight. I made two NCAA championships in the hammer. Never made a final though. And so that's kind of when I was coming out of college and kind of thinking what I was going to do with my life. I I think based on like marks alone, I don't know if I could have justified continuing to train, but it was one, like considering how little time I had actually trained and thrown the hammer and how kind of quickly I had improved in that short time. And also to how far I had thrown the weight. Because yeah, it's pretty much the same technique. Like weight, you can get away with a little more technique imperfections because it's a shorter thing and it's right there in your hands. You can just kind of rip on it. But I knew I had like the engine to make it go. And also I had great coaches who, saw all of this before I did. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of
So
what
where's that?
led me to take that
Where
jump
does
to
that?
keep training.
Yeah. So where does that motivation come from? The decision that you're like, hey, I'm not all that good. I'm okay at the hammer, but how do you make that? Where do you get that motivation? Where do you get that decision to be like, I think I can be good enough to go be an Olympic athlete? Why? Like, where? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I
Where
mean,
does
it was
that come
definitely
from?
not the most easy decision, especially considering the landscape of women's hammer that I was coming into in the United States. So, coming out of college at the time, all top 3 women in American history are all, I mean, still now, all active and in their primes. Now I have moved
Right.
into that third spot, but now it's what, top 4 or 5 or whatever of us are all. So I kind of knew that, like, okay, to make a team ever at all, because usually it's top 3 at Olympic trials or USA championships, whatever it is, make, if it's like a world or Olympic team that year, like I was really going to have to improve by a lot, even like just looking at the numbers, let alone technique and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think, like I said, it was just one, just like kind of a feeling that I had more in the tank, and also both like my college coach and the coach who I ended up moving to work with now post collegiately, both kind of like seeing all that untapped potential that, like, yeah, maybe I had an idea of, and like, yeah, I knew I hadn't, fully exhausted what I was capable of. I don't know if I quite knew it was going to be to this extent coming out of college, but I had people in my corner who, even just having more, familiarity with the event, could see that in me. And so kind of, yeah, helped make
Yeah.
that decision.
No. And I'm guessing that, like, if we look at a little bit of a line graph of your progress on the hammer, like I'm guessing that we're seeing a pretty good uptrend, and with the idea that it's still trending up. It's not we're nowhere
Mm-hmm.
close to a plateau of any kind.
Right. Yeah, no,
So that means
yeah, I would say even at this point, still, so this season, I'm in season already, so this is my 4th season post collegiate, and I've improved, what is it, 11 meters since college, which
that
is
seems
kind
like
of
a lot.
wild. It is a lot, and
I was
especially
gonna say
kind of
I don't know I don't know much. Yeah, I don't know much about the numbers, but that seems
yeah,
like a lot. Like
yeah,
what's
and
a good what's like what are you throwing right now?
um so my personal best, which I set last season, is 78 meters 80. Um, so far this season, I've had a meet back over 78 and 2 others in the high 76s. So it's been a good start. And this year has already
Well,
been
I mean,
a good bit more consistent than what I was doing last year. And yeah, so it's cool to be at these larger numbers and still feeling like there's more in the tank. So
well, I mean, you're talking about over in the 4 years you've been doing it professionally. It's a 15% jump or so. That I mean, I don't know
yeah, and I
much about
think
the
some
hammer,
of
but that
that,
seems
yeah, and some of that, well, obviously, the majority of it is just the I have found like a great fit in the coach I work with now, both obviously technically and personally. But I also think this is only my 9th year total throwing the hammer, and only the last 4 of them being just hammer. Like, I was at Notre Dame for 5 years, but I was throwing hammer, shot, and discus. And so my time was kind of split. Like, so 9 years in general, even if it was hammer the whole time, isn't a lot, but it's really only been the last 4 that have been all hammer focused, and
Yeah.
all like that being the only one that I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I mean it's good to see that you're there, you're progressing, you've got the right system, you've got the right coaches, you're going. But what's really interesting, I want you to speak on this a little bit because I got connected with you through Shane Fisher at the American Paragons, and
Mm-hmm.
and he's a big fan of promoting a lot of the sports that are underfunded, underwatched, and things like that. So it's I love, and this is no way, shape, or form trying to throw shade, but when we
Right.
say doing it professionally, I
Mm-hmm.
want you to make people need to understand that it's not, you know what I mean? Like there's levels of doing sports for professionally, and
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I'm finding
And
about a lot of these Olympic athletes, it's not like it's not what you think.
no, yeah. And I'm blessed right now that I'm able to have training be my main thing, where I don't have a second job right now. But like I said, like when I was coming out of college, I wasn't, anything really. And I decided late that I was gonna, you know, keep training. So I didn't have any kind of like USATF funding, Olympic Committee funding, anything like that. I hardly made any. I made maybe a couple thousand in prize money my like 3,000 in prize money my
Yeah,
first year out. And so I was waitressing. I did because I didn't have a job lined up coming out of college because I thought I was going to grad school. I I needed a job and that's what I could get. And so yeah, my first year out of college, living in Ashland, I waitressed, and yeah, it worked fine until it didn't. And but then thankfully I had a good enough first year that got like a USATF Foundation grant, and it it was a little more than I was making waitressing. So I'm like, okay, at this point,
yeah,
like especially that was the end of what was it, 2023, so coming up on the 2024 Olympic year. I was like, okay, I can't, if I want to have a shot at making this team, because like I had a good first year. Like I think I improved my PR like 6 meters in that first year, but it wasn't consistent and it wasn't going to be quite good enough to what I would have to throw at Olympic trials, or so I thought, to make that team. I was like, okay, I've already gotten this like grant from the State Track and Field Foundation that it's a little more than I'm making waitressing. I need to like lock in for a year and like have this be my main thing. And thankfully done well enough since then that I've been able to continue doing that. And also I live in rural Ohio, so it's not expensive, and which is also a blessing. And yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So what's the when you talk about training and that's what you do every day, like what's a day in the life look like of somebody who's training just to throw the hammer, to
Yeah.
hopefully show up to, like, I mean, let's be honest, I mean, how many, and you mentioned this, that like the whole idea is that like it's all going to come down to like whether or not you go to the LA Olympics, it's coming down to just like a handful of throws,
Yeah.
uh, training every day for what is it, 4, 5, 6 throws that it's gonna really
It's
come down to?
6. Yeah. Yeah, the trials
Si-
is whoever's
Six
top
throws,
3
right?
after 6
That's
throws, and that's what it is.
yeah. I mean that's it's a lot. Like when you think about that you're like and there's other. I mean, I know that there's world championships and stuff like that, but let's
Yeah.
be honest, it's a lot about the Olympics, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, you're doing all this training, and I'm assuming you can speak to this every day, doing
Mhm.
all these things for a handful of throws to
Yeah.
hopefully measure yourself up against.
Yeah. And I think it can be very easy to, I guess I want to say, like, get caught up in that. And that, because putting it that way feels very like heavy. And trust me, like yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just you saying it, like we all feel it all the time. And I think it is like what kind of helps with that is focusing more on the day to day or the year to year. So like there's not really any major championships or anything this year, but like next year there's a world championships in Beijing. So I'm like, okay, before I think about LA, I want to think about making that team. But okay, how do I make that team? Well, what do I need to improve my throw? I need to get some good meets under my belt. I need to throw against some good competition. So I get used to doing that. Last year was the first year that I threw internationally. So by the time I made it to Worlds in Tokyo, I had a couple international meets under my belt. So I knew what it was like to, travel overseas and do all that stuff. And so I think it can feel very heavy to think about all of this training and stuff that I do and put myself through every day, all coming down to that one moment. So I think it is also very helpful to not only break it down into goals of like how I'm going to get there, but also just like finding satisfaction in achieving smaller goals along the way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just this year for me has been more of like a focus on also like really enjoying what I'm doing, because last year I opened my season with like a 4 meter PR. It was world lead at the time. And I, as much as I like didn't want to admit it or was like kind of fighting it, like it did come with some like pressure and expectations. And I was talking to Alex Young about it, who I saw you also had on your show. He's the best.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard when the expectations are reasonable and like within the realm of what you can do. Like unreasonable expectations, it's like,
Right.
okay, you know, think about, oh, I'm gonna go out and throw the world record tomorrow. Like maybe, but probably not, you know? But when
Right.
you have reasonable expectations that like, okay, my training's pointing toward that I can throw this like distance or finish this place against these competitors or whatever it is, or even just like previous meet results, I think that's harder to deal with, especially because I then through the middle and kind of end stretch of my season, it was very up and down. Like other really good throws, other meets I fell out of and didn't do well at Worlds, and all these different things that like all of the data said I could have should have been doing better, and so I would have expectations of how things were going to go, and it's again not even like they were like unfounded expectations, but that doesn't make it any like less heavy or hard to deal with or
Yeah.
distracting
Yeah.
from the things I need to be focusing on. So
No.
I know that was a lot of
Yeah. No, I
meandering all over
understand
the
that because
place,
it's
but
no, no, not at all. Because I think it's absolutely true in the sense that like as you're present, you talk about those expectations. As the closer you get to those expectations, because on some levels we say we have these expectations, and we put them out there knowing that there's so many uncontrollables that could
Mhm.
trip us up. That's not our fault. That we could still at some point still say, well, it didn't happen, but it's not really my fault. This happened. This happened. This happened. There's nothing I could do about it, right? But as you get closer to that goal and that expectation, and you realize it's just on me, and this is very possible, and the only thing that's going to mess this up is me screwing this up. Like it's like
Yeah.
it starts to become more real, and then once it becomes more real, then it's like that's when it starts to really change that psyche and that psychology in your head, because
Yeah.
I mean, which is why you have to account for that a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think so.
Yeah.
One kind of like good example I can think of from last year was like I had a rough middle of the season, but I was turning it around like right before USA's. I had a great meet right before USA's, and my training before USA's was like the best I've been throwing in my entire life. Like I would like training those were all consistent, all really far, and like there was a pretty, you know, big number that these throws are pointing to, that like I'm gonna go out to USA's and throw this number and it'll be awesome. And again, wasn't unreasonable. Like, especially my coach is very like numbers guy, so like we kind, and so am I. So we, you know, how things are trending and how different balls correlate to different things. So it's not like, again, I had an idea of what I could throw, but for me it became this like big expectation. And then I didn't throw it at USA's, but I still threw in well enough to make the world team, which I was very excited about, very happy about. But at the same time, it did kind of like almost like steal some of the joy from that moment, because even though like I achieved the main goal of what we were trying to do, of making my first world team, make my first team USA, stuff like that, I still had this like, again, to some extent, little dark cloud of like, I
Nope.
still, you know, I still underperformed. I still didn't throw, you know, what training was saying I could. And like, so overall, like, even though like I was thrilled, I was so excited, it was still a little degree of like, but I could have done more, should have done more. Like,
Yeah.
I was fully capable of doing more, which
Well, and that's,
is,
I
yeah,
mean,
I
that's
don't know,
the,
isn't
yeah,
the best way to go into things.
that's the thing about, yeah, that's the thing about expectations is that like we have to have some level of them or we'll never,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't even try. Right. But then the expectations can be too much. And it's just finding that fine line, which really gets into the mental side of sports. And I know you talked about how you have an interest in that and that psychology. And that's, so I kind of want to, it's just going to be a long question, but
Sure.
your athlete probably spends hours working on the specific skill set they need for their sport. And they probably spend hours in the weight room building their body. But how much time do they spend intentionally training their mind? Well, building mindset is the key to bridging the gap between the skills that we see and game execution. Well, Mental Mettle Coaching provides individual programs that can help your athlete develop this third and crucial skill set. The thought is like I always talk about there's like three skill sets you have to be really good at a discipline or a sport. And the one of them is you've got to practice your specific skills. So like you have to have the, you know, you got to know how to throw a hammer, right? Or it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
like, it doesn't matter how much you can throw or lift or whatever. You got to know, you
Yeah.
have to practice your technique. And then of course you got to get in the weight room and you have to get bigger, faster, stronger to be able to throw that hammer fast more. And then that third skill set is the mental skills. And I'd kind of like, and you told me that you feel like that's an important part of it. So I'm just kind of curious in your training, like how much do you do of each? Like how much time and effort and are you putting into learning how to throw a hammer, and how much time and effort are you putting into getting in the weight room, and how much time and effort are you putting into working on the mental skills? I'm
Yeah,
just kind of from your perspective.
for
I'm
sure.
curious about that.
Yeah, I would say probably like the technical actual hammer throwing part is obviously the biggest one. Um, just in terms of time, like right now I throw 5 days a week. I lift either 2 or 3 right now. And what I'd say about the mental side of things, I do spend some time just focusing on that. However, what I have also found is helpful for me is kind of like baking it into usually throwing. I don't usually do it too much lifting, because lifting I just kind of turn the brain off and go. But um
Yeah.
so what that might look like for me is like, okay, and this is something I've figured out with the um sports psychologist that I've been working with, is like, okay, for example, like I go out and throw and I'm walking out to retrieve. I might do, like, as I'm walking out, like a quick body scan. Cause for me, like when I get anxious, like it really shows up in my body a lot, which I know is like the case for a lot of people. But So for me, one of the biggest challenges, like even when if I'm like mentally in a good place, my body can still be like
Yeah.
bugging out. And so we started making that into a practice. We're like, okay, that like just walking out to retrieve my hammer is a little time that I have, nothing to really think about. So I can just like, as I'm walking, like check in with my body. What do I feel? Yeah, like do a quick scan through different parts of my body. What am I feeling like? What do I notice? Different kind of stuff like that. And that kind of pays returns, and like I can do as much practice as I want, like in a controlled, kind of isolated setting. And that is also very important. But also getting reps in of like with other stuff going on and I'm moving and different things are happening, of still being able to like check in with myself, and then once I'm done, like go and lock back into what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I love that idea that you're talking about that body scan and checking in with your body, because I'm a huge fan of understanding that embodiment a little bit better and understanding the emotions that we're having, how that affects our body and how our body affects our emotions. Because what's amazing to me is so many young athletes like almost purposely ignore that part. Like I don't want to tune into my body. I don't want to see what's going on. I'm like, you're an athlete and you're using your body. You need to be in tune with it. Now the problem is, and your psychologist is your sports psychologist is probably doing this. The trick is to tune into your body and notice what's going on without passing judgment on it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem, is we do
Yeah.
that way too much, and we can't pass the judgment on it. We can say, oh, I feel that in my body. What's that going on? What do I
Mm-hmm.
feel from that? Maybe what can I do with that? How can I adjust that without saying, "Oh, this means that I'm weak," or
Yeah.
"Oh, this means that I'm not going to throw well," or, right?
Right.
It's the passing judgment that is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think because especially like, oh, I can notice like, oh, I feel shaky right now or tense. And it's like, those are things that, aren't exactly conducive to good hammer throwing. We need to be nice, like especially being tense, you need to be nice and long and
Right,
relax and let the ball stretch and do all this stuff. Like, well, being tense isn't really too helpful for that. So it can be easy to be like,
right.
I feel tense, that I'm not going to throw good. Like, and almost like you get nervous about that, and it's a whole cycle. And so it's definitely easier
It
said and
just
done
yeah.
of noticing. And for me, it's also kind of gotten to the point of like, okay, I also like going into any competition of any scale or importance, I'm going to have some degree of like anxiousness, especially even if I'm like in my
Of
mind, I'm not worried about anything, even if it's like
yeah.
the most low stakes meet ever. So, like, for example, like during indoor season, I'll usually just kind of go to whatever college meet my team is going to, the college I train at. And like, okay, I threw like at a meet at Akron this year. Where, like, it literally doesn't mean anything, but I'm still like, my body's still
Yeah.
like, okay, it's time to go. And
Yeah.
it's kind of gotten to the point where like
Yeah.
it, yeah, it's not super comfortable, but like it feels normal, and I know I can still throw well, and I kind of know what to do to manage that a little bit. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that the difference between anxiety and excitement there really isn't much difference. It's pretty much just a label that we,
Mm-hmm.
depending on our mindset, what we decide to call it, because we do have to have some level of activation energy to go well.
Mm-hmm.
But if we label that as anxiousness, then as you kind of mentioned it, that cycle, if we think about things in the wrong way, then it starts to cycle negatively. And if we start thinking about things in the positive way, it starts to cycle positive. That's why you have to be so in control of it and notice it, rather than just, if we just ignore it, it rarely goes somewhere we want to go. We don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
it goes somewhere we don't want to go if we don't notice it. So
Right.
I love that. I love that you're doing all that. Another parts of the psychology, we didn't really talk much about your background, but I know that you mentioned that you grew up playing club volleyball a lot, which
Mm-hmm.
and how you only started throwing as a senior, and then you've only done the hammer throw for 9 years now, and almost as most of it is professionally.
Mm-hmm.
What that idea of and you mentioned it, how specialization in a sport sometimes affects psychology. Now you're an Olympic athlete, so you're expected,
Yeah.
like, specialization
That's
is what
not,
you
yeah, that's
do.
not
But we're
really an
talking about
option.
youth. We're talking
Yeah.
about, yeah, it's not an option. Like, you can't be like, oh, I think I want to, do something else too. But that youth specialization, and I could see it in your answers that you were like, that you have an opinion on it, and I'm kind of
Hmm.
curious some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I briefly mentioned before that I was going to go to grad school for psychology. And because when
Yeah.
I was at Notre Dame, I was in a developmental psychology lab that didn't have anything to do with sports at all. But I was on a project where we developed like a scale, like a psychological measure instrument for like, what was it for? It was for like science majors to rate like how integrated being like a science person is into their identity. And ideally, the College of Science was going to take this
Ooh.
and measure it against like both performance outcomes, but also like student well being. I don't know. I've never heard
Yes.
any kind
There's,
of
like, you
outcome from
say
what we did,
you say
but
yeah, no, I get that you
and
say
so
that it's not sports related, but the second you
yeah,
start to say that, I'm like, oh,
right. And so
this is what kids do, right? So I could see how you would want to take that, because this is what
yeah,
kids do when they play just
yeah.
one
So
sport.
this
So yeah, with
this
that
framework
that
that
identity,
we
yeah,
yeah, this framework that we base the scale on is called self-determination theory. And it's basically like, so a lot of the times we think of motivation as like intrinsic or extrinsic. Either you're doing it because you like it or you're
yeah,
doing it because, there's other outside benefits or consequences or whatever. But what
sure,
self-determination theory does is puts it on a continuum of like a motivation, I don't want to do it at all. I forget all the terms. This was a few years ago.
sure,
But basically, like, I'm doing it because there's a reward. I'm doing it because I risk like a punishment. I'm doing it because other people think of me this way. And then we move a little more towards intrinsic, where it's like, I'm doing this because it is a part of my identity. I'm doing it because I enjoy it, because I want to, because I'm choosing to. And it gives a little more nuance to the idea. And I think when I have kind of considered that both against, like, well, one, yeah, doing the whole club travel thing growing up, I did it because I would say it was mostly because I loved it, also a little bit because I felt like I had to, because my high school coach only really took people on
yeah,
the team who played club. So that's kind of how it started, but
yeah,
then I ended up loving it and continuing to do it. But
yeah,
then I also knew people who, yeah, only did it because they wanted to get a college scholarship or because their parents wanted them to, or some people who did it because they absolutely loved it. And I think when we think about like specializing in youth sports, and this is what I was going to go on and study in grad school, was kind of applying this framework to like kids who specialize in sports and outcomes, because I think there has been mixed research on it and sometimes inconclusive, because it is usually in like a dichotomy of like, did you specialize early or not
right,
did you, like, there could be two kids who played travel baseball since they were 5 and are in college now playing baseball. One could be absolutely happy and thrilled, the other one could be completely burned out, but they both specialized since they were 5. Well, why is that? Maybe, I hypothesized, because the one has done it and continues to do it because he loves it, and the other did it because his dad made him, or because he wanted to college scholarship and now he's in college and he has no other reason to do it because he doesn't actually like it. And so I think,
yeah,
yeah, there have been studies who have like that have not totally found a relationship between specializing and certain well-being outcomes, because I think there needs to be more of a look at why the specialization. I know there's also like physical health, and that's
It's
not in my scope, but yeah, that's what I was
yeah.
gonna look at.
It's a great no, it's a great because there's so much there, and there's so much to tease out from a scientific perspective to actually figure out what's going on. But I think that one of the things that they are fairly clear about it is that like when kids make their sport their only identity, it
Mm-hmm.
can be problematic. If
Mm-hmm.
that's if you know what I mean, if and however they got to there, if that's their whole identity, because what happens is whenever you stop playing it and then you don't have an identity, you don't know who you are, right?
Right.
And that's a problem, right? So I think one of we're getting a little short here on time, Rachel, but I want to ask you then, as looking into that and thinking about that specialization, that identity and stuff, like I would love for you to answer to me like two questions. Why do you continue to throw the hammer? Like, why do you love that? And two, what is your like? Do you have an identity beyond being a hammer thrower? Like kind of turn that lens on yourself and like answer those questions. I would just love to hear
Yeah,
that.
for sure. Um, I would say the main reason I still throw a hammer is because I love it. I love like having something to work towards and competing, and the feeling of like giving my all to something, and it's just fun. Like I get to travel the country and now the world with other people who are really fun, and throwers are the best people in all of sports. They're all throwers are amazing. And yeah, it's brought so many of the best people in my life into my life, including my husband. And it's just, and also I don't want to feel like I left anything on the table in terms of
Yeah.
like my potential and what I'm capable of. And maybe it will, maybe whenever I decide I'm done, maybe I will still feel like, you know, maybe I could have thrown farther than I did. But I think just the idea of me doing all I can to work towards something is,
Yeah.
yeah, what the main thing that keeps me going. And it's just really fun. Um, Outside of throwing, yeah, I would say just defined by like the relationships I have in my life. Like my marriage to my husband, obviously the
Yeah.
most important.
What I love about that, Rachel, is you like even in your answer, like you like to me it feels like you're not a hammer thrower, you're a competitor. So you know that about yourself. And like you're I mean, and you probably know this enough about yourself. Like, well, someday when you're done throwing the hammer for the good old US of A, you're gonna have to find something else to be competitive about to push yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm fine with. But it's not you're not completely wrapped up in being a hammer thrower. You're wrapped up in being the best version of yourself that you can be, and I think you can
Mm-hmm.
apply that to anything and everything. So I think that that's a great idea. So the last thing I'll ask you is, what's the I always ask this of everybody. The last question is what did I not ask you that I should have? Like
Oh,
what's the
jeez.
conversation we didn't have that we should have, or that something that you thought, man, I really thought he was going to say this and he didn't.
That's a
Any
good
thoughts on that?
question. What didn't you ask?
It's my favorite. I love that question
Yeah.
because it just it puts it on you, and it's a tough question, but
Mm-hmm. What didn't you ask that you could? I guess that really the only thing that's coming to mind is like I definitely feel like we've talked about a lot about like how much I've grown and like how well I'm doing now. But I guess I don't know if this is much of a question as much of just like a statement. But there has also been a lot of like failures, and especially in like the mental side of things, where like a lot of times in my career where like physically I was primed to perform really well, and it was me not managing the mental side of things as well
Yeah.
that is what held me back. And so I think, I don't know, maybe some kind of question about like how I've
What?
grown
Yeah.
in you know,
I think my
managing the
question
mental
then,
side of
yeah.
things
Well,
and
I think the question I have for you then is, I guess it's just an assumption that there's going to be ups and downs, and you're right. We didn't talk about it, but like, what is what's your viewpoint around failure
yeah.
now?
I mean, sucks. And like the cliche is always, and I mean, not in a bad way, the cliche is always like, oh, failure is just something to learn from. And like
Yeah.
it
Oh, sure.
is, like 100,000%.
But it still sucks.
It still sucks. And
It does.
it's
It does.
okay that it sucks because it means that you care and that you know you can do better, and just yeah,
It's
like kind
such
of
it's such a
both at the same time, like yes you can learn from it, but also not pretending that it doesn't suck.
it's such a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right? To like have that failure be something that doesn't break us and that we learn from, but also drive us forward.
yeah,
Because if we swing too far either way, like if you didn't care if you failed, if you said, "Oh, it's just another lesson," well, you probably wouldn't drive yourself,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
One,
if
this is somewhat
yeah,
related, but one thing I remember, it was some professional runner. Like I think at some point while I was still in college, I saw a tweet of he retired from running, and he he said he realized that he was done when he stopped getting nervous for races. I wish I could
yeah,
remember who it was so I could
no, that makes
quote it more
sense.
effectively, but
No, that
yeah,
makes
and
sense.
that really like changed how I look at things a little bit. Is because like yeah, I'm all like you said, if I think about, oh, my whole career is coming down to like, you know, 6 throws of Olympic trials in 2 years, like that does make me very nervous. But that also
Yeah,
means that it's something I care about and like, and really investing myself in. And if I didn't care that much, then I wouldn't be
yeah.
nervous about it or like afraid of the entirely real possibility that I fail and it doesn't happen. And
It's a it,
yeah,
no, it's a great
I mean,
point. It's a great point. There, you've got to find that line, and you don't want to fail, but you want to learn from when you failure, but then also like be a little upset that you failed. 'Cause I get it. I get it. That it's a more honest approach to failure rather than just saying, "Oh, if I don't lose, I learn," and it's like it's
yeah.
fine. You can
It's like
say that,
kind
but
of, yeah, but
yeah, it's still yeah, but like I mean, it still sucks. So yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to continue to all the success in the world.
Thank
Keep it
you.
up. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll be rooting for you. And yeah, keep it up, Rachel.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I
Thanks
sure
for having
appreciate it.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I stole your line. All right, thanks,
Coaches,
Rachel.
do you dream
Thanks.
of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, We focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness, using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Toman, at Mental Mettle Coaching.
So there's a lot of insightful things that Rachel brought up and we discussed in that interview, but there's two things I really want to focus on. First of all, just the idea that confidence isn't blind optimism, it's evidence. I talk about it all the time, how real true confidence is based on evidence. And one of my favorite moments from the interview is when Rachel's talking about deciding to continue to throw professionally after college, after her own admission that, she was like, I really wasn't all that good. But she said, she kept saying phrases like, I had more in my tank, or I had the engine or the capability. Think about that. She wasn't saying, oh, I know I'll make Team USA. She was saying, and she wasn't saying like, oh, I'll be one of the best throwers in the world. She simply recognized evidence that she wasn't finished growing. She saw progress, trusted what her coaches were seeing. She knew she had another level. Just like she said, she had more in the tank. And I think too many athletes think that confidence is, oh, I believe I'm going to win. Well, that's an outcome-based thing, and there's a lot of factors there. Confidence is believing that you're capable of growing. It means that you believe that your preparation matters, that the time you put in matters, and that's important. Rachel improved her hammer throw more than 11 meters after college. That doesn't happen because someday she wakes up with confidence. It happens because she keeps stacking evidence on top and more, and she recognizes when she's improving and she keeps working on it. So that's my first challenge to any athlete, coach listening to this is like, stop asking, can I become great? And think about, well, what's the evidence that I'm getting better? It's that, and that takes the anxiety out of the pressure too, because it comes down to 6 throws. Well, that's a lot of pressure. Well, instead of be thinking about what am I going to do on those 6 throws, just keep focusing on what's the evidence that I'm getting better. Those are 2 different questions and they give 2 different thought processes. And I think that just continuing to lean on and recognize the evidence, the positive evidence, is just really useful. Now, the second one that I noticed that she talked about is that her mental training isn't separate from her physical training. I think that's huge. Some athletes, absolutely. I've talked to athletes on the show that we do this, and they do a lot of mindfulness work. They do a lot of visualization, and you should, and it's fantastic. But she isn't doing it that way. She's like baking her mental training into her physical training. And for some people, that's incredibly practical and more useful. And so like when she between throws, she walks out to retrieve her hammer and she does a body scan, checks her breathing, notices where she's tense, notices where her anxiety is showing up, how it's affecting her physically. And as we mentioned, she doesn't just judge it. She just notices it. That's mindfulness. It's not necessarily emptying your mind. It's not pretending you're not nervous. It's just paying attention to what's going on around you, what's affecting you, how you can adjust from it, and what you can do differently. And that's a powerful lesson here because a lot of athletes treat that mental training like it's something extra. And then when they talk about it being something extra, then they have to say things like, well, I'll work on my mindset later, or I don't have time today. Well, Rachel doesn't add more time to her day. She bakes her mental training directly into her physical training, and every throw becomes an opportunity to practice awareness and practice that mindfulness. And every walk becomes an opportunity to reset. And that's such an elite way to do it. Okay. She's training her brain and her body at the same time. And that's probably the best way to do it, to have both engaged. And so that's my challenge to any athlete, coach, listening, parent, is find a moment during your practice where you naturally have a pause. Maybe it's between free throws, after a sprint, or between serves, or when you're coaching and you have a moment. Find these moments, and that's when you do your check-in. And obviously practice it first. That's really important. Rachel's doing it when she practices. But do that moment to check in. What am I feeling? Where's the tension showing up? What am I thinking about? What can I adjust? What can I do differently? 10 seconds. But 10 seconds repeated hundreds of times becomes a habit. And that's when we start to make these changes. Okay? It's not big motivational speeches that build mental toughness. It's habits. It's repetition. Okay? The two things I talk about, recognition and repetition. And this repetition part is the part that we slip on a lot of times that we forget. So that's the two things I would take from this, is just building on that evidence to get your confidence, and to bake some of your mental training into your physical training. Two great things from Rachel that I picked up on. Great interview. And I mean, obviously she's an elite performer, an Olympian. So anytime that we take somebody like that and they talk about how they do it, it's worth listening to and worth paying attention to. So if you like what Rachel had to say, go back, check out some of the other Olympic athletes I've worked with, handball throwers, or handball players, throwers, climbers, Nordic combined, bobsledders. It's all kinds of stuff. And they all have, there's a lot of similarities in what they say, but there's a lot of different ways that they do it. And they're all worth listening to. So if we made it this far and you enjoy the episode, do me a favor, share it with somebody, share, subscribe, all those things. It really helps. Share the message of the Mental Mettle Podcast and what I'm trying to do here. It's a free resource for coaches, athletes, parents. So, do me a favor and share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman, and always remember to forge your mettle. Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your mettle.